All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your spin, and well, this is going to be a little bit different. It's not a EPL focus. We just had the U.S. international window, and it has been a while since I've talked about the U.S. In fact, I didn't really do anything in the summertime, and so I figured this is a pretty good time to kind of just recap what happened in the summer. So I'm going to talk about what happened in the Gold Cup, kind of do what I normally do, kind of run down the games. Had it on DVR and was able to rewatch it. Took some notes on that, but I also wanted to talk about what happened leading up to that. What were the kind of storylines kind of leading up to that, and mostly to just go back to what it was in the summertime to set up what we just experienced this window, because I feel that that's a pretty good way to do it. It's a good way to just remind ourselves where we were back in the summer, what we were feeling, and then to see if anything changed or not. And as everyone kind of already knows what's happened over the last two games, I want to say the vibes are not good, to say the least. And so we'll try to cover what happened also in the obviously in the friendlies. So we'll get to that as well, and then just kind of close off with some thoughts on where I see the U.S. team, where it's headed. Again, it's generally not so rosy as it was, back, I want to say, like, October a year ago, to be honest. But that said, we're doing this with players that I personally would not roll out anymore, and for some reason, we keep continuing to give, players these important kind of windows. I feel we haven't fully rolled out our best sets of players, whether or not it's for injury or other kind of reasons. I'm hoping October finally, because there'll be another window in a couple of weeks, that finally changes, because maybe the one kind of exciting bit of news is coming in, leading up into the run up, whether or not it's in March or even, maybe it's in June, right before the World Cup. Apparently, we are. I think maybe even towards the end, in December, we have been scheduled with the likes of France and Portugal, I believe, and I think there's maybe even someone else. So we are going to have genuine competition. Now it'll be friendlies, but it is you take what you can get. Anything it's better than just you know eh, competition versus clubs that aren't necessarily going to be in the tournament. There was a period where we played like Uzbekistan in a friendly, which just didn't really make, other than they were the only people available. That didn't really make a ton of sense, and we actually weren't good in that game, from what I recall, either. Uh, y- y- Things and going back to what we saw in the Gold Cup with Concacaf. There's just nothing to gain from these kind of experiences, uh, simply because of the standard of competition versus those countries. Now, some of those will be World Cup teams as well, but just the player pool that we are rolling out for those kinds of things. For the longest time, we've had, and we're the only nation that does this. We're the only federation that does this, and in my opinion, there's been uh, a lot of conversation about, what is wrong with the U.S. and Federation. There's been tons of opinions rolled out about that, but from my vantage point, I haven't seen enough people talk about how insanely weird it is, and detrimental it is for us to just accept having one set of players that is, quote unquote, the A team that we roll out for Nations League every, couple of windows, and then an entirely different set of players, usually sets of players that we would all consider substandard, or the B or even C sets of players, roll it out as an entirely different camp. Whether or not it's in January, when we actually have the European-based players that are with their clubs and they aren't able to play. I would just argue it's worth it. It's worthless to hold any kind of separate January camp, anyways. Whether or not it's a way for the manager to get some more time with players. It's with players that he shouldn't be using. in my opinion, and it's only done. And this is maybe a little bit more conspiracy. It's only done to suit the MLS commissioner, the head of the domestic league, as a way to kind of push. Oh, look how many players. Look how many any MLS players are on the U.S. men's national team, and that way you can market it that way when you're doing during the season when people go to games. I'm sure they'll have a U.S. player that's part of the brochure that'll be like part of the U.S. team, and they'll have a picture of them from the Gold Cup or whatever. I'm just kind of imagining things, but for the most part, and that maybe feels conspiracy based, but for the most part, it feels like that's where we are. We're not in uh, in a healthy relationship where the idea of everyone involved is rallying around the goal to do the best we can this coming summer. It feels like more and more this experience happens. It feels like the idea is something entirely different. It is to prove a different cause that the domestic league can do it themselves. And there was been a bunch of storylines leading up to this where uh, a play someone like a Paxton Harrison came back to join the MLS. I think maybe Zach Steffen as well. Now, I don't really care much about keepers, but Paxton Harrison is definitely someone to highlight. Where it was promoted by all the reporters that he did this as a way to think that he has a way to maybe prove himself to make the final roster team, and it was celebrated like that. And again, it's only just it's basically just him. Uh, but I remember it wasn't that long ago when Pulisic was maybe leaving Chelsea that people on Fox were desperately advocating for him to come back and join the Galaxy. Similar people were doing the same with Gio before he joined Mönchengladbach, in Germany. So I think they're not being subtle about what's happening here. And when you look at the players being picked for these kind of games, I don't think it's impossible to overlook that there's not a different objective at play here. And so, for the most part, a lot of the reasons why someone like me or other U.S. fans have become, I won't say disillusioned, but have I mean, it was always gonna be a hard, step up for us to improve on us being more competitive than we've been in the past, regardless of what kind of player pool we have. Other countries have been able to, produce, new talent in the last 4 years anyways, and you would argue much better talent, despite us having the home field advantage that we will have. A lot of it is because we're not rolling out our best players. If you had Argentina roll out with their B or C team, it wouldn't necessarily look the way it's looked for them either. I think you could only argue, someone like Portugal or France, maybe even England, would be able to get away with doing what we've done. Uh, so there is a lot of that at play, in my opinion. So, anyways, we're gonna get started with there is there's a quote. There's a famous quote by Taylor Twellman, and he's now become a spokesperson for the MLS. Funny enough, but before back in I think 2018 when we did miss out on the World Cup, he had a very famous rant. What are we doing? What is the point that we're doing? What's happening here? What are we doing, guys? Essentially. Obviously, he was able to deliver it with a little bit more passion than me, but that is where we're going to start. What are we doing here? That's the theme to start off with what we've seen with the U.S. Gold Cup, with what happened in the lead up to the Gold Cup, which is where I'm about to go, and then what just happened in the last 2 days. So let's get started with the Gold Cup recap. And the final, we got to the final. So we only lose 2-1. That is what it is. I will talk about that game, but I feel the result is inconsequential to the overall performance, and not just that, the performance of the month leading up to this tournament, where everyone accepted this was going to be the last real true time to experiment a little bit, the last true run up before next summer. And so, for lack of better words, this was not good. So we'll just get started off with the 2-1 game to Turkey, and this is going way back. So sorry for that. Jack McGlynn gets it started with a lovely finish. Opening 2 minutes or so to go in that game. And funny enough, I remember watching that live. We weren't even able to watch the goal for some reason. Something had gone overtime, but I mean, that was a great start, and there was another chance early on to make it 2-0. We actually started off pretty good. It was, a rain-soaked day, I remember as well. But what happened is, or after 10 minutes or so, we start playing really scared, and Turkey, in my opinion, sensed it. So our center backs, and it's Chris Richards, who I really like, and I'm going to praise for the most of the episode, post this. But he has a lot of center qualities that I really do like in a center back, and in fact, one of the things I'm going to say about him later on is if there is a World Cup roster sheet, or starting 11, named for a game starting tomorrow, his name would probably be second on that sheet. He has become immense, not just for us, he's also very good for Crystal Palace, but the one area where he's maybe not the strongest is when he's got the ball played to him at his feet, when he's got a turn. He's never been comfortable with it, and he hasn't been comfortable with Crystal Palace too. They don't really use him for build-up play unless things are just really, really obvious for him, or at least he can get the ball without anyone kind of being near him. Essentially, Palace use other players when it comes to their build-up play. We had 2 center backs, both Richards and Miles Robinson in this case, who did not look like they wanted the ball played to them. And the other thing that started to happen is so basically our center backs start to go wide, almost hide from the ball. And so now there's not really an option for the keeper because the keeper that we played, I might have even been Freeze in this game, he didn't necessarily look that comfortable with the ball either. And our fullbacks in this case were Freeman and Arfston, and likewise, not really comfortable offering security to receive the ball under pressure. Essentially, Turkey recognized this, and they start pressing us really, really high up, and we start to get stuck. We start to basically kind of go backwards or sideways, and we're just playing balls into very dangerous areas, and we nearly create a mistake early on. Uh, but also, Turkey starts to win the ball back, or we start to recycle things basically in our own box, and basically comes down to Hannes. Johnny Cardoza makes a mistake, and it's really unfortunate that it was him of all people because he was someone that a lot of the quote unquote MLS people have been trying to highlight that he's not good enough, despite what he's done in La Liga, despite people have seen him do against Real Madrid in a number of games. He's since moved from Real Betis to Atletico Madrid, and he's starting. And he is a quality player, but for some reason he's never really excelled in the U.S. shirt. And here, he just he gets played a ball from one of the center backs, or maybe it's from the keeper, Freeze. He doesn't look comfortable with it and takes way too heavy of a touch. And Arda Güler just basically pounces on it, gets a deflection to just kind of go past the keeper. Turkey, make it 1-1, and then they just continue to press us. We continue to look uncomfortable without a response, and it leads to basically the second goal as well. And then we just did not offer much in the second half. So it really was not the best kind of start to this. And then Switzerland up next. Here's a chance to maybe make a statement, and we made it. We certainly made a statement, just in the opposite way. And this is a Switzerland team that mostly featured a lot for them last year, and so you looked at and they were just knocked out to penalties in England, I believe. So it was a good test to see where we were, but we did not roll out the strongest team. Switzerland rolled out a lot of their A team guys, with the exception of a couple youngsters, and a couple of the youngsters starred and scored. Uh, we did not do that. We rolled out a bunch of players that frankly would not have started in second division leagues in Europe, in my opinion, and that shows up. So you think maybe it's a blessing that this game happens, but basically it was a lost straw for Pochettino in some cases because some of these guys we did not see afterwards. We Main one being Matt Turner. We didn't see Matt Turner in the Gold Cup, and he did not have a good Nations League kind of leading up to that. So Matt Turner's kind of sacrifice allowed someone like Freeze to come in, and Freeze maybe won the job. And one of the few things to say when I get to the South Korea friendly and Japan friendly that just happened is Matt Freeze is someone that you can maybe say had a pretty good window. And other than Florian Balogun, really, it's just them. But at least it's not insignificant that at least the keeper had a pretty good response. The keeper is and that's not a position you really want to have question marks coming into this. We've had Turner for all this time, but he just now I thought he was thrown to the wolves in this case, but he didn't. There was one goal. It might have been the third one where he just did not have a good save. It just parried it right into. I think Mbola was the striker, just right into his path, and that made it 3-0. But again, it's 4-0 after 30 minutes in this game. That just kind of says like what happened here. And it could have been easily more. I mean, they had passers in midfield as well. We could not get any pressure on them. We showed up and looked like we had never played with each other before, and we just did not know what to do with the ball, both with it, but we also just did not. We were playing defensive players, and we were playing a high defensive line, and it looks like we had never seen someone like in Dan and Dory, just being able to sneak past everyone. I think Walker Zimmerman was one of these center backs played. It was Walker Zimmerman, and maybe Miles Robinson, and we just played with and we were playing in a highish defensive line, with zero pressure on the ball, and they just had players that were able to just see slip balls in behind, and it was just so easy to get in behind. And Dan and Dory makes it 1-0, just sneaks past everyone, and then a little bit after that, let's see. There's another young tall attacker playing for Germany in Freiburg. I don't actually have his name here. He just all he does is he skips past Arvston like he's not there, and then square ball into the box, easy finish. That makes it 2-0. Arvston was really rough defensively, both in this game, both in the lead ups to the Gold Cup, and then in the Gold Cup, and then only after all of that, you still had people trying to push him, and he finally did have a decent-ish game after starting very very poor in the most recent Japan game. Playing in the stadium, he is a crude player, but I want to just kind of highlight. I did not like anything that I saw from Arson defensively, at least leading up to this, and also I didn't like what I saw from Arston defensively in the friendlies that we just had. And I'm highlighting I'm highlighting him in particular because I can sense what's happening where Pochettino keeps pushing him as a big time leader in the locker room, and there's been a lot of this time without Anthony Robinson, and you can just sense because I've seen this happen before when I saw it happen with Jesus Ferreira and Ricardo Pepe, where Ricardo Pepe was responsible for all of the good stuff that we did. Then we qualify for the World Cup, and then all of a sudden it's Jesus Ferreira getting all the attention, all the starts. And when it came crunch time, Jesus Ferreira got the selection, and it wasn't Ricardo Pepe. Ricardo Pepe wasn't even part of that squad in the end. I'm not necessarily going to say that's the same thing happening here, but it just feels weird to me how much they've been pushing this guy, and it's not to necessarily go against him. No, don't want to do an individual vendetta against him, but it is very weird how all of a sudden he's getting all the attention now. Now Anthony Robinson is just only returned from injury. He's not being able to start for his Fulham games. He's been able to get minutes for them, but he hasn't been able to start. So maybe they're just kind of, easing him in. I can understand that, but I haven't felt comfortable the way that I have seen MLS media, U.S. soccer media as well, push this guy. And especially, he has the great across that leads to the assist for the in the Japan game that we'll be speaking about, and all the talk afterwards was how great he is, and then Pochettino just wanted to, again, speak about how great he is, and it just that to me feels weird. Now, if you wanna include him in the final roster as maybe a backup, uh, that can maybe be, acceptable. Serginho Dest can maybe play as a backup on the left back if you wanna play, Scally or someone else. So there are things to talk about there, but anyways, I don't think what I've seen from Arston is enough for him to be a starter because he looked there's this youngster on Freiburg, and he looked like he had never seen anyone this kind of ability with the ball at his feet and the pace to get by him with ease that he does. And then against Turner spills a shot for Embolo to tap in, and then this other guy, Mamitsani, has taps it off with a terrific goal from distance here, where again maybe Turner can be responsible, but this is also just hit into the roof of the net from distance. This was a laser, but so it was Mark McKenzie. It wasn't Zimmerman, but McKenzie and Zimmerman are the center back pairing here. Harrell is the right back. We thankfully don't see Harrell, for the Gold Cup, but because he could not do anything here. The two Aronson brothers, Brennan and Paxton played in this game. Cam Sullivan and Brian Wright were starters part of this game as well, and they were sacrificed. We did not see them for the Gold Cup, and deservingly so. They didn't look like they belonged. None of this was competitive, and we were just such a mess in every aspect. We were not competitive, and then so that was just kind of leading up. Those were the two games that we had before the Gold Cup even started, and so we get to the Gold Cup, and lo and behold, things are a little bit different. Now we play a Trinidad and Tobago team that looked like they didn't really care about being there either. This wasn't competitive either, and it was more of a case of just them just being very very poor than us necessarily being good, and also pretty bad keeping. But we do win 5-0. The main star in this game is Malik Tillman. He gets 2 goals. Patrick Achamayang gets a striker start, who we hadn't really seen, leading up to this. He scores as well. So there you go. And then we tacked on a couple late. So it wasn't even the 5-0 kind of performance. It took towards I don't know, the final 5 minutes where we got the final 3 goals, where Haji Wright and Brennan Aronson came on to add to this. And then unfortunately for us, Haji Wright right after this training gets injured. And looking back, I do think that was consequential, because we could have used him in some of those games where the Achimayang experiment did not really work out. So the next game, you have 5-0, and just Fox didn't do any kind of uh, any kind of hopeful analysis, or any kind of just unpartial critique. Basically, it was USA, rah rah rah, we're back, basically. And so, if you were only getting your insight from U.S. soccer media or Fox properties, you would have thought that we are going to steamroll through everyone. And up next was a test for Saudi Arabia, and we were pathetic. Unlike Trinidad and Tobago, Saudi Arabia was very well organized. Now, they set up to basically just get out a 0-0, or maybe even a 1-1. It wasn't really like they were trying to actually win the game, but they were just set up to not let us to not concede, basically. We could not get any kind of significant touches in the box. When we did, they were very just well drilled. They seemed to they marked the wide areas. We couldn't really get any space out wide. We couldn't really get behind them. We couldn't get touches into the box without them intercepting it. It was just really, really tough for us, and we were able to get the win thanks to a Chris Richards header on a set piece. But that was really rough. And then the final group, and that was 2 wins was enough for us to get through. And then the group game versus Haiti, the third one, we win 2-1. Tillman with a really nice goal. Freeze has the one little disaster moment that leads to their goal. I think he just kind of passes it to one of them, and it's kind of basically a tap into an empty net. And then Patrick Ajamayang uh, did well to get a 1v1 in behind, and he was able to go around the keeper, and so good for him there. So we get into the knockouts. It wasn't a ton of things to really talk about. Basically, like I said, a lot of this was really just a pointless exercise. We're just kind of waiting for maybe more kind of competitive games to really get a hold of what we have here, and we get it with the knockout game in Costa Rica. This goes to a 2-2 game where we do not have any kind of control at all in the second half. So 1-0 against Costa Rica, I think it's a pin, or 1-0 them. I think Arsene actually is at fault for a foul there. Then Diego Luna makes it 1-1. Then Arsene actually makes it 2-1. And then Martinez on Costa Rica makes it 2-2. So depends to grow. But a lot of this, it was 2-2. And then again, just that it's a U.S. It's inside an American stadium ground. The atmosphere, the way that they had the ball and they were doing these attacks, it felt like a home game, maybe for the other side. we felt very vulnerable. And we got very lucky that a lot of their crosses, a lot of their shots just barely missed and weren't really connected on. But it felt like we suffocated. We were playing a team that recognized, hey, they can go toe to toe for with us. They can press us. When we tried to press them, they knew what to do with the ball. They were able to to escape that, and it was very uneasy. At least till it got to extra time. Then extra time, just everything kind of petered out. But we go to PKs, and we were not good. We missed two of them. One being Sebastian Berhalter of all people, and that'll be a name that I really focus on later on into the final, and then when you get to the friendlies, the very Berhalter name of the our old coach Greg Berhalter, and this is I don't know how in the world we've all of a sudden spawned and where this kid has turned up and he's undroppable. And again, Pochettino starts to just praise. This is another one that starts to be pushed really, really hard on how great he works. How all of a sudden he's taken our set pieces. Now he was and throughout this Gold Cup, Fox was trying to highlight how important he was and how good his performances were, and all of this was just gaslighting nonsense, to for lack of a better phrase. And I get to a point where this is so brazen. I don't know if Berhalter was still the coach, if he would have been able to get away with this, all of a sudden putting his son like this, where all of a sudden he's undroppable, at least in this kind of B seed, BB or C team kind of roster that we're rolling out. And it's not just that, because we just had a call up as well where he started versus South Korea, and it was not good as well. So we get to an important PK here, and he misses. And someone else missed as well. We only advance here because Matt Freeze was unbelievable, and he basically becomes a hero overnight, and deservingly so. These were pretty good saves that he makes. So we get out of the first set of knockouts, and then on to the semifinals where we face the mighty powerhouse of Guatemala, because Canada also pooped the bed. So, and here, Diego Luna, to be fair to him, has himself a day, and fair to him, good job stepping up. But Guatemala is not necessarily enough for me to believe this is enough for you to warrant being considered more for the A list team, because right after this, again, we started to see in nonsense where Diego Luna should be played over Gio Reyna or even a Pulisic. I saw some people saying, and hey, Luna was special. For a couple of those goals, because they really were well worked. They were. He does well to find some separation, and he gets a good shot off, and fair play to him there. But man, I again, this was a very weird game. We have a 2-0 lead, and the second half happens. Once the team starts setting off us and starts pressing us in a high line, we couldn't handle it, and we lost control in this game as well against Guatemala. They get one back, and frankly, we were lucky not to go into extra time in that one as well. And so there we go. We get to the final, and we get to the Mexico game, and Patrick Achamayang draws a foul. I think it's he does well to receive the ball. I think we go long, and he's able to draw a foul. And then Berhalter's son puts in a decent free kick, or even a good free kick. We won't have an agenda here, at least yet. He does put in a pretty good free kick, and then Richards has a perfect header that sneaks into the goalpost. So a perfect start. This is 5 minutes to go. 5 minutes into the game. This was a very awkward kind of experience as well, because I think they closed the roof in SoFi Stadium, and there were flares or there was something pregame that they allowed, and it was just a smoke-filled mess. Now they said the field vision for the players wasn't really affected, but it definitely affected the cameras, the camera angles. But anyways, so we get off to a pretty good start. And then from the note I have here is from minute 8 to 22, we cannot get any touches on the ball. Mexico started a 5'3" 16-year-old in Rodrigo Mora. I laughed when I saw this before kickoff. And to be fair, I did not really watch any of the other Gold Cup games. Again, I just didn't really think this was worth anyone's time. I stomached myself for the U.S. games, but I didn't check out anyone else. Apparently, this guy was a star for them, leading up to this. So, I laughed, and it was, my expense really, my ignorance showed here. He was unbelievable, and it's just he always knew where to go with the ball, and it just we got into a point we got suckered into defending deep. It wasn't just him; it was just all of them. Really, we started not just defending deep, we started defending narrow. Our press could not get anywhere near their center backs with the ball as well. So that's usually how you can control games. Basically, if you have center backs that can handle someone running at them, you have a goalkeeper that can handle that as well. Eventually, you can just get attackers to run in a circle. They get tired, and all of a sudden, everyone drops off. And so Mexico were good at doing that. They were good at handling pressure in a way that we weren't necessarily great at doing that. But the other thing too is whenever it came time where it seemed like we were close to turning them over, or we were close to making them go long. They had play from Raul Jimenez being able to link up and hold onto the ball, to be an extra number basically to receive it in a way that we weren't really able to get out of Ajamayang, despite him doing him creating the first foul, leading up to this. So where do we go with this? We so Mexico is doing very well in their shape. They're staying wide. They're making the pitch as big as possible. That's hurting us as well. And we're defending narrow, which is very weird. We're giving them the wide spaces. Maybe we just think they couldn't hurt us. I don't know. But it seemed out of possession. We tried a very narrow 4-4-2 shape with Tillman and Patrick Abayang pressing as a two versus Mexico building up in a back three. So you're outnumbered in that sense, anyways. So that doesn't really work. I mean, again, you're not really pressing to win the ball back. You're just kind of just token pressure, I guess. Since essentially, it's not the end of the world. But this just happens for I want to say like a 15-minute spell. We just can't really get near them. And the other problem is they found a way to just get any kind of pressure near us, where we were just kicking the ball long. We couldn't hold on to it in a similar manner. So that wasn't good. The other thing too is on the wings. I mentioned the 4-4-2 shape. We're playing Berhalter as our winger. We don't have an out and out traditional kind of wide, pacey kind of 1v1 kind of winger. Essentially, we went into this gold tournament and we did not have, we didn't have Tim Weah, and it seems like after Weah, we didn't have anyone else, and that was a giant, red flag when people saw the roster coming into this. Did Pochettino really go into a full international tournament and he didn't bring a single winger? No Christian Pulisic was available for this, and there was a lot of talk, going in about that, attacking actually Pulisic for not subjecting himself to play with us. But at the same time, you look at who he would have been played with, he would have been blamed, for playing with guys that don't belong. Just the final, we got what we deserved basically. Mexico, on the other hand, played Edson Alvarez, played Raul Jimenez, and a couple of the other quote unquote A list kind of players, and they were rewarded for doing so. And the other thing to say is you have someone that like this 16-year-old wonder kid, basically, who he body wise he should have been just bullied off the ball. To be honest, that might seem a little prehistoric, but I just did not fathom. You hear a 16-year-old, someone like a Yamin Yamal at least has an adult body. This kid really was tiny, and he was running circles around us. And it's just Mexico is able to produce that of that kind of quality. It was such a difference in watching what he wanted to do with the ball versus say a Diego Luna, uh, or anyone else that we had, basically. And we get hit by that. But the other thing too is we get hit in our out of position shape, where we've got I mentioned how Berhalter is on one kind of wing, and then Diego Luna was quote unquote the other wing, and they're not doing anything to help out. The other thing that's happening is we were starting to have someone doing the inside, or someone doing the runs on Mexico's kind of wings. We've got uh, we've got Freeze, or not Freeze. We've got Freeman being drawn inside, where it feels like Chris Richards could maybe help with that, and so they're following for some of the distraction that Raul Jimenez is doing, where Mexico is just able to creep up and creep up more and more, and they're able to get their fullbacks kind of higher than we can, and they're able to just really, really pin us back. Uh, and it's not great. So we've got people that they found a way to just really really pin us in essentially, and their Mexico's left winger or left back are able to get open, and they're right back in the same way able to get open, and it happened time and time again, and it was leading to some dangerous crosses, and you just figured it's only a matter of time basically. But another problem here is so again we're defending so narrow and so deep. It's not just the narrow part; it's the deep part as well. When we do win the ball back, there's never an outlet to advance the ball, and so immediately Mexico were able to counterpress us into hell. We weren't able to, pin them back necessarily. It's not like you can send a long ball to Berhalter to win a sprint, and it felt like Mexico really really recognized that, and it felt Mexico could maybe handle, risking 1v1 or handle their defenders playing in a higher line to really squeeze us because we didn't have an ability to pin to respond to that as opposed to going long in our way basically. So that was a problem as well, and it's not like Diego Luna necessarily is going to be able to do that either. So we didn't offer them a threat, and anytime we tried to play in Patrick Aubameyang, he was losing the ball. He wasn't able to do what Raul Jimenez was doing. So it just felt that, and the more we couldn't do that, the more Pat Aubameyang's inability to do that, it just hurt us. And he needed to win those 50-50s. He needed to draw fouls. He just needed to do something to allow us to breathe, essentially, and he couldn't do it. Um, and as the game went on, it really became a problem. So, and on the flip side, Mexico's Raul Jimenez was offering that security, was making himself available, was just popping up and able to link play. And again, it just allowed Mexico to have an extra player on the field, essentially. We're not able to follow it. Chris Richards can't necessarily do it, and neither could Tim Ream. And we'll get to Tim Ream when we get to the goal. So it just felt this wasn't going well. Uh, and basically we get to the goal, and it comes off, I think, a late throw in, but basically we get stuck. We get stuck for multiple minutes even before this. And Berhalter, Freeman, and Tyler Adams are all drawn to the ball. Mexico are able to thread a pass in behind, so it beats everyone. That beats three or four players just right there. They get top of the box, and then they have another Mexican player that threads a ball into Raul Jimenez, bending a run in between Tim Ream and Richards. He's on sides, and he's able to just get a finish on before Ream can react, and it's a great finish. And then he has a nice little tribute to Diego Jota, his former teammate when they were both at Wolves, which was a nice touching moment to see as that had just happened. Uh, and that news continues to be surreal to me. So don't want to remiss and go back because I do kind of feel sad about that news, despite never really knowing him. But he was one of my favorite players, basically at Liverpool, just simply because of what he did on the field. But everything said that he was also a special person as well. But again, didn't necessarily have any personal knowings with him. Anyways, kind of getting sidetracked there. The goal felt coming, and again, it's our lack of ability to get out of Mexico's end, and the goal itself. It's hard to see what more could have been done differently because again, Tim Ream is 37, 38 years old. He has old legs, and it is what it is. He can't recover spaces anymore, even in the box. It's hard to ask him to close down when someone is played behind. Richards maybe forward a little bit better run as well. I mean, it's an unbelievable pass envisioned by the two players on Mexico. First, the through ball to get the ball to the box, and then the through ball that plays into actually into the penalty area. Uh, but the issue to me is this should have been the last time that we saw Tim Ream, in my opinion. And I want to. I've been kind of harping on that a little bit for a while now. It just feels like if you're playing with a center back that just can't really cover in a lot of ground, not only can he not defend spaces behind him or defend spaces out wide, even in the box he can't make that recovery. And so I just feel like this was a giant missed opportunity to not try someone, to not give someone else 3 different games or however, many games are in a tournament, to not give them more kind of a chances to prove themselves. We saw Mark McKenzie for, like, a friendly, and he was played a little bit on the left. We saw, Walker Zimmerman, who I don't really love either, and I would argue it's the same kind of problem. Uh, but at the same time, he is younger, at least. Not advocating for Walker Zimmerman or even Miles Robinson, but it's just Austin Trusty is kind of a name I have here, but we don't really know what he is either. I just feel like we have missed a giant opportunity to try to find someone else. I'm not saying Tim Ream doesn't shouldn't be part of the World Cup team. I've mentioned it many times where I would like him to maybe have a little bit of a behind the scenes kind of locker room role. Senior leadership, those kind of things in between games where maybe in training he can offer some kind of leadership. I don't want him on the field. And I just we don't seem to have either a fan base, a media base, or even the coach that understands this is going to be a problem, and it continues to show its head. So I can only imagine if a year from now we're playing Tim Ream, I'm going to be doing a podcast where I say, this goal, this consequential goal, could have been prevented if we didn't play this guy. It is a giant fear of mine that I foresee coming. But it it, it it's, it's rough on there, but also the lead up to this, Berhalter and Freeman have really poor communication. It almost seems like they're marking the same kind of player that Berhalter is playing inside, and what I mean by that is kind of centrally. And the reason why players do this is it's much easier to mark spaces in the middle than go out wide. And it's just we allowed Mexico to have that entire sideline and on both sides, and that's what I mean when I say we played narrow. Freeman as well has poor communication because he's kind of marking someone that maybe Chris Richards has. So we allow Mexico to get a free man on the wing, and then he's able to get a free kind of ball in between with a little bit of that vision, and just one kind of pass just outplays three people. So we get to halftime. It's 1-1. Could have been worse. I mean, we could have been down even more. But you looked at the bench, and there's not much room for help here. So we get to the second half. Poach doesn't use any subs. So well, that was a decision because things could have certainly improve. Then you can't look at that and say that this is going well. Uh, but he does maybe use a bit of a tactic change. We maybe see Tillman used a little bit more out left, maybe Luna through the middle more because Luna was getting bullied both on the left side when he had the ball, but also he was getting targeted and he wasn't doing anything to help out Arfsten, who was also basically getting targeted. But another thing that's a problem is Luna is responsible for a foul, and Mexico get a free kick, and they score off it, and it's a terrific well worked free kick with the Edson Alvarez on the end of a double header, very well worked set piece. They go short, they have a flick on header, and then Alvarez times his run, and he's able to get the directed header to go in. And again, it's a telling moment. They had someone like an Edson Alvarez that was at the time a European-based player in the Premier League for West Ham. He essentially moved on since then. I think he's playing in Turkey. But Raul Jimenez still is doing his craft for Fulham. You had two players that are European based that won the game basically for Mexico. There's no other way to put it. Alvarez was a reason why Mexico was bossing the game. He was dropping in. He was part of the reason why when he would drop in and be part of that back three, and he was not shying for the ball when Mexico were trying to build up in a way that Tyler Adams was not doing for us to call out someone who is the one kind of lone Premier League player, and it is unfortunate because he's been so good for Bournemouth in the last year or so. He just seems to kind of make things kind of rough when we play with him for the men's national team. A lot of people have been going at Johnny Cardozo. Tyler Adams, you go back and you look at the last time Tyler Adams played well in a U.S. shirt. You almost might have to go back to the 22 World Cup. He was not good in Copa America either. Now, it took forever for him to recover from injury. So you can maybe go excuse some of that, but here he was shying from the ball. In my opinion, he was shying from the ball in the friendlies leading up to this. In my opinion, he did not have a really good last window as when we get to the friendlies coming up here. So it was a problem. He was also overly aggressive in his challenges. He kept fouling, and I just think it was the best way to talk about why Mexico won this game and why we didn't is to highlight Tyler Adams versus Edson Alvarez, and then Raul Jimenez versus Patrick, Ajimayang. Um, but I'm hyping a little bit on Adams, but the other thing too is, yeah, we just there were players that could have looked at we could have used maybe in a better sense. There was Luca Della Torre, I think, that may even started in this game. He maybe had some vision to take on some risk, and unfortunately for us, Pochettino basically sacrifices him first. So that wasn't positive either. We get to a moment where a Mexican player basically falls onto the ball in the box. Should have been a blatant PK, so maybe it could have been 2-2. Maybe we could have gotten it to the penalties, kind of eking this out. I don't really think who wins mattered. I just wanted to see a performance, and we did not get a good performance in this game. Uh, you know, towards the end, we're chasing it. Pochettino gets desperate, brings on Damian Downs, plays the second striker. Wasn't against that, but again, I feel like we could have maybe sacrificed Achimaying instead to maybe make, because what that did is they made the midfield lighter when we were already struggling with midfield. I think he could have sacrificed Berhalter and kept Luca Della Torre on. Um, and then a few minutes late, to go in the game, he brings on the Aaronsons basically for Luna. And again, that's a change that could have happened 20 minutes before that. And then I think Tolkien comes on for Arfson, and it wasn't necessarily like Tolkien was necessarily any better either. It just he was falling on the ball at moments. It didn't really feel like he deserved an additional cap either. And Arfson as well, I thought was just bullied. And I was just looking at who could be on the roster sheet if Anthony Robinson can't go, and you have people like Loon and maybe Scally that could play on the left side. It just I didn't like what I saw from Arfson, to just say the least. So you look at, and then you looked at the rest of the bench with the Haji Wright injury. There weren't a whole lot of options that were worth considering, and I think the real black mark or down mark of the Gold Cup happened even before the kickoff was made, and it was the roster selections. Where even on day one, people looked at what was picked, and just there wasn't a single winger selected, which already kind of highlighted. And we get into the tournament, or even going into the warm up. To go without a winger was certainly a choice. And to me, Pochettino made a mistake exactly like Greg Berhalter made. You going into the World Cup 22 when we went without a striker. We were supposed to move on from those kind of mistakes, and it wasn't a good thing that Pochettino made a similar kind of mistake. You can't really say that he really uh, covered himself in glory in the actual Gold Cup final, where it felt he needed to make changes before he did. And you don't want to necessarily, again, I keep saying you want to focus more on the performance than the result, but the result does matter, especially when it is against Mexico. And it allowed people to look at what Pochettino's record is in finals, at the club level at least, and it really isn't good. It's starkingly not good. Uh, I'm not necessarily saying, immediately he has to go, mostly because I don't really know what benefit you get, a year out from now. It is what it is. We've hitched our wagon to him. I was hoping that we would move past some of the mistakes that we saw from Berhalter. We wouldn't have these roster issues. We having someone that wasn't necessarily tied to the MLS league, having someone from the outside. I thought we were going to see a change, a change from the federation looking a different direction, but also a change in how the U.S. team was operated. And instead, not only has it been more of the same, it's almost gotten worse and more kind of obvious that a different objective is at play, which to me isn't really positive either. So we get to kind of the main talking points here to kind of end with. Uh, if Berhalter had suffered a lot of these losses, I do think it would have been a sackable offense. I do think people would have been beyond the pale. And my thing was saying the saving grace is these are mostly players that we hopefully wouldn't see again. And unfortunately for me, we just saw a lot of them this past window. The other thing to me was Tim Weah continues to be probably the most underrated player in the squad. he's the only reliable, creative, wide attacker in the pool. Pulisic is a creative player, but he doesn't take players on with the kind of pace to get in behind to stretch back lines, the way that Tim Weah does, or maybe even Balogun could offer. And it just felt we missed an ability to be direct. When you're being pressed and you don't have people that are good with the ball at their feet, they can't play through lines, they can't do tiki taka, triangle passing through pressing. The other only option to keep the ball is to be able to go long, whether or not it's to go long to finding people, doing great runs in behind where they have the pace to do that, or being able to go along to someone that can handle and win 50-50 duels. Essentially, we just didn't have that ability, and just I feel like Tim Weah uh, continues to be a bit of an underrated player, and the only thing to say about him when I get to the friendlies is I don't like when he's played on the left, which Pochettino continues to play for some reason, as opposed to playing him on the right and give Pulisic that left wing spot, essentially. So, and then the other thing, speaking of Pulisic, no Pepe, no Balogun, no Reina, who continues to also be a very underrated player because he is someone that he wouldn't shy from the ball. Would be being under pressure. He would be a reliable option to show for it under pressure, to be able to receive it, to be able to turn with it, to be able to make the right decision and not lose it, to be able to play people in, to be able to in the final third, be able to see runs ahead of him, to be able to play make, all of these things that you would want. We don't, for some reason, when Gio Reyna doesn't play for us, we miss that creation. And a lot of people have decided to just devote some kind of agenda against Gio Reyna, and everyone can. We don't have to go back what happened in the 22 World Cup, or maybe even why we've gotten rid of Greg Berhalter in the beginning, or what Gio Reyna's parents did, in that whole soccer. We don't have to go there again. I'm just the pure kind of football sense. We need him, and the only kind of negative is he really has been in a rotten spot with Dortmund, who almost held him hostage. They didn't want to play him ever. No, it did take for him forever to recover from his injury spells. Young player, who grew up a lot, height wise, over the last few years. Maybe it took forever for his muscle joints uh, to kind of respond to that, because in the beginning, when he was 17 or 18, he was kind of the size that Pulisic was, and then he grew up to like 6'1" really quickly. So maybe that's the reason why he had all those injuries. I don't know. Sometimes it takes a while for young players to kind of to beat up their bodies a little bit through training, just to to injure yourself, to be able to handle physical kind of senior football as you go with, throughout your adult career. There's been some of that as well, like the body breaks down. That's kind of on purpose. But either way, Gio Reyna has been in a lock boot, essentially under Dortmund, and they didn't want to let him leave without holding him hostage this past summer. But he's finally joined Gladbach, and we'll see if he gets game time in the Bundesliga or not. But if he does, obviously he immediately gets back into the conversation, and he immediately I mentioned how Pulisic, Weah, and Balogun, when we get to him, or or one of the early starts, or Chris Richards. Gio Reyna needs to be in that conversation as well. To be honest, we need someone like him. Uh, no Musa, no Weston McKennie as well, and as a minimum, they should get consideration for some of those midfield spots. In my opinion, it's maybe not the most balanced, but the last time we saw, Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, and a Gio Reyna midfield starting three was against Brazil, when we probably looked the best that we have looked in a very long time, and it was only after Tyler Adams got into the equation that that was in the lead up before the Copa America, where we stopped seeing that basically. All Meston McKennie and Musa have become underrated by our fan base too. For some reason, McKennie has games where he's absolutely special, and then he has games where he's rusty. He doesn't always play as well, but he seems to he's done a pretty good job with Juventus, that we've seen. And but he also, there was that game with Jamaica where he was quite special. He seems to have that vision to to play in Pulisic a lot. So it feels like McKennie is just again an underrated kind of player. Sometimes he shows up, maybe he's not the most in shape, and that kind of gets to players or gets to people's minds. But on the ball, he is quite good. But Musa is as well. And again, you get to a point where when you play against top quality opposition, that uh, one, they know how to press you and they know how to get near you. You need players that aren't afraid of someone getting near them. Basically, you don't necessarily always see that in the MLS. The few games that I do watch, there's a lot of open space. That the MLS league has become very transition based, which it is exciting for the neutral. Yeah, up and down kind of, open games, and it's great, but you don't have midfield. You don't have, controlled games when you need to, maybe the game's slow and you need to find a way to either pick a lock or you're under pressure and there's not really a place to escape. We've got players that actually can, that have proven, that can, handle that kind of playing style. But we haven't seen them. We haven't seen them for like two years now. Johnny Cardoza is another that I want to say. The fullbacks. You look at the fullbacks to continue this on. There's not only just Joe Scally. There's Serginho Dest and there's Anthony Robinson. Uh, and again, Robinson just whenever Robinson plays, he owns that left side both defensively and going forward in a way that that's the only way, in my opinion, to make Tim Ream's legs work is you have Anthony Robinson near him to help recover, and they both played together when they were both at Fulham a couple of those seasons, so at least they have some of that chemistry as well. But other outside of that, and outside of maybe some kind of back three formation that we just saw trotted out, I don't see how you make Tim Ream usable. But the other thing too is if you do play him, you've got to have recovery legs near him. The other thing to say is you have to have that left sided midfield. If you have someone like an Anthony Robinson or this in this case an Arfston that goes up to try to join in the attack, any kind of any kind of cross that goes off is going to be intercepted if it's not connected on. So that's going to lead to a transition moment anyways. And so Tim Weems is going to be exploited by any team that knows what they're doing. And so that means, if our fullback does go high, the midfielder on that side needs to be able to sacrifice their body and their legs to be able to help out in recovery as well. Those are you have to find you're hamstrung when you play someone like Tim Ream, basically. And I hate highlighting this. I don't really love doing it. I don't want to have this agenda against him. This isn't an MLS agenda thing because he actually went out and proved himself in Europe, and he was good for Fulham when he played those seasons ago. But he can't do the job now, and you just every time you watch it shows up. And so I'm just trying. You want to play him? I understand he's probably the best center back when it comes to being on the ball, and that's not nothing. To be fair, but if you wanna play him, you've gotta find a way to surround him with legs, or it's not going to work. The other thing to talk about is no more Patrick Agyemang. We need to figure out the striker spot, whether or not it's I was of the opinion that maybe Pepe should be our starting number 9, and that Balogun maybe works better running into channels. I don't know that's at least the note I had here. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to go away from that. I actually feel like I could defend that still. But at the same time, Balogun, just had a very good, yeah, couple of games. One again, only him and Freeze are worth talking about for the friendlies that we just had. Balogun might actually be a pure finisher where Pepe is not. Though there are games when we can't really get when Balogun can't get in behind and there isn't that space, and you've got games that are just very boxed in. That's been a way for teams to kind of play us too. We saw that in the Nations League game versus was it Haiti in one of those semifinal games or even Canada. No, maybe oh, it was before Canada where we could not do anything. We had like 70% of the ball, and we can do anything to break them down. We saw that for Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned as well. And sometimes we don't really have the most kind of creative kind of players. You don't really have the ability to get in behind. Maybe those are the kind of games that Balogun doesn't work as well, where someone like a Pepe does. Pepe to me is a fox in the box, for lack of a better phrase, and I actually think that's a pretty good phrase to describe him. Now we haven't been able to use him because he got injured for doing something with his knee back in the Champions League for PSV, and it's taken for him forever to bounce back from that. I think he is actually returned and trying to play games, but I want to especially back in the or coming in the December kind of window, if it's true, we're set to play against the likes of Portugal and France in friendlies. I want to see both Pepe and Balogun in that team sheet. You don't necessarily have to start both. You can even you can have fun on who to bring on as far as on the bench role. But I want both to get minutes here because we need both basically, and that maybe shores up a little of that striker kind of depth in a way when we haven't really had a reliable kind of striker in a very long time, and I think you can maybe argue we have 2, at least 2 decent ones that can get goals, for us. So, is it the end of the world? You know, already, I guess talking about, Richards as well, I think he's, solidified that the center back spot. Don't really love him on the left, as spoken about, and then keeper as well. So, what we're gonna get into, is this the end of the world or not? With a better selection of players that we already have at our disposal. We don't have to go out searching for a ton of people. I would like to find a center back that can play on the left side, but I don't need to harp on that. We have a potential 11 with some depth here that is much better than what we've seen. Now, is that going to matter in the summertime? I don't really know. But for the most part, a lot of countries have been able to get on vibes and home atmosphere have a little run in a tournament. So again, it's not fun to just doom post, as you say. You want to be optimistic. This is a tournament that anyone that's been a U.S. soccer fan over many years, once it was announced that we were going to have this thing, it's been what a lot of people have been looking forward to over the last 10 or 8 years, and it's finally coming up here. We aren't doing the best to at least for the buildup of it, but that's fine. One really good example to highlight is, and this is even a country that ended up firing their sacking their coach before basically 3 months before the tournament, or even maybe a month before the tournament, is Morocco. Morocco was not having the best run leading up into the World Cup in 22. All they did was they make the semifinals by being both having elite athletes. To be fair, they have someone like Ashraf Hakimi, uh, to name someone, and the former Sevilla I think striker was some they had players in Europe, but they were just very defensively stout and sound, and just maybe that's kind of the blueprint we can follow. I don't really know. We have an ability to both be defensively compact with better players at our disposal. We have an ability to also play pretty good with the ball at our feet as well. So that's just kind of that's where we are. To the things to talk about with Pochettino at the end. It's not great that we are seeing a lot of the similar things that we saw with Berhalter, but I want to get something out here as well, because there've been a lot of people that seem to have tried to rebuild Greg Berhalter's history with this team. Greg Berhalter blackmailed players. He burned bridges. He made terrible team selections, and so Pochettino did not have a good Gold Cup. He hasn't had a good start to his managerial career with us. The A lot of the things that have come out haven't necessarily been great either. Where he hasn't really been the most communicative, he hasn't communicated the best with some of the guys that haven't been in some of these pools. Like a lot of mains quote unquote mainstays that you would imagine have said that they haven't had communication with the manager yet. He hasn't really left. I don't think he's actually moved here, but I mean that's not the end of the world. But the only times you see him doing scouting is he's going to MLS games, and you see him giving all these quotes, hyping up the domestic league. And again, you're trying to butter up some people. That's not the end of the world, but again, the main objective is to not promote the domestic league. And we've soccer fans have been called conspiracy theorists for saying that this is the MLS has a stranglehold on the national team, and the success of the national team is not the priority. The priority is promoting the domestic league, and it's hard. it's getting harder and harder by the day, by the window, to say that there isn't some kind of quid pro quo happening here. And again, you just when Pochettino was brought in, you thought that was going to change, and it hasn't. Um, so the note I had here was hopefully for a different window, and I was hoping to see this for the September window. Is you have Tanner Tessman is another player. You have Aiden Morris, players that can maybe come in that we haven't really given chances to. So we get to a very to so we get to another kind of window here, and it's a very weird roster camp. So he leaves out the likes of Giorena. He leaves out Musa. He leaves out Scally. Scally is actually the player that I'm thinking of that said he didn't have any communication that he wasn't invited. Frankly, he got to a point he didn't initially call up uh, Florian Balogun. There was some kind of injury with Brian White, I believe his name is, and I don't really follow the MLS that well. So apparently, some striker for Vancouver Whitecaps, I believe, and he was part of the Gold Cup team, I think, or at least part of the friendlies leading up to that. He was the first choice, and then he apparently was injured, wasn't able to go, so they had a late call up to bring in Florian Balogun. So that's not positive either. So we get to what happened with South Korea. And we start with with Josh Sargent, Tim Weah on the left, which again is weird to me. Diego Luna and Pulisic together, and Luna and Pulisic together really hurted us in out of possession, and I'll kind of focus a little bit on that too. And then Tyler Adams and Sebastian Berhalter, because of course Berhalter has to start again. And then Arston, Tim Ream, someone named Blackman who I'd never seen before, and then Serginho Dest. It was good to see Dest back. When we get to this game, which I'm about to do, Dest was the only one worth talking about for that first half. So the South Korea recap is this was beyond a disaster. We could not do anything with the ball, and in defense, we were making them look like 2011 Barcelona. And I just mean, if you were a neutral turning in, you got to see some real entertaining build up play by South Korea. Just the way that they continually problem solve, the way that they always had an extra man to escape pressure, even in times when it seemed like we had people close to them, they just had no issues playing clever 1-2s in tight spaces to get away from pressure to then open up. You'll find players in giant open spaces. This was impressive to watch, and just the level of flicks, the level of just field vision that everyone had. It was uh, one team, you played entertaining football at least, and I guess we kind of helped out a little bit in that regard. They put on a clinic, and then on top of that, so beforehand, before they got the goals, they had shown an ability to get behind us multiple times in that first 20 minutes or so, where most of the danger was coming in from their main man, Young-Min Son, famously of Spurs, but has since actually moved to the LA Galaxy. And you had Galaxy and MLS kind of social media accounts kind of highlighting well done MLS for yeah, the first goal scorer in the game basically was an MLS player. So talk on our league again. Those kind of cheeky kind of comments. But we get to the first goal, and this is a mess on our end. Pulisic gets played around, and then they're able to find a way to get the ball from one sideline to the other, where Dest is kind of pinned, and so he has someone that he's trying to mark on the outside of him. So that's why people that are trying to blame this on Dest are just really really off base. But Dest does decide to run towards the ball, and he leaves the man that he was marking, but it doesn't really matter because they're able to find the other guy anyways. They're able to slip a pass in behind Blackman, and then after that, Ream is too slow as well. So it's poor by Blackman, it's poor by Tim Ream, who can't recover, and then Sanj is able to finish by the tight angle. You can't really blame Freeze. The keeper has to come out, and just Son is just a very good world class finisher. But the problem is leading up before that. So we have Pulisic that isn't really he's just marking no one. And it's just really easy for them to be able to get the ball towards the halfway line of the field on the sideline where now Dest has a 2v1 in his situation. What is he supposed to do? If he just stays with this guy uh, on the sideline, you know, that pass in the Son still happens. So you need to find a way to get some kind of pressure onto the ball, or someone like a Blackman cannot allow Son to get goal side of him. So it's just and not to go at this Blackman guy. It's someone that I'd never seen before. I could not, for the life of me, understand why not only was Tim Ream starting this game, you sat Chris Richards. And if nothing else, if you're going to play Tim Ream, it is what it is. I've kind of accepted it at this point. You need to start. You need to field the starting center back pairing that you are going to have, because this was a serious contest. This was a decent chance to kind of because South Korea went in with their full choice kind of team. At least with Son, they also played a midfield of someone from Birmingham FC, and I kid you not, Hyundai Motors FC, and those were the guys that looked like Xavi and Iniesta, but they played Son at least. Uh, South Korea were part of the World Cup team. They haven't really had the best kind of run, in Asia qualifying, but I think they're expected to also uh, make next summer's tournament. So this was decent competition, and versus decent competition. If nothing else, one, you need to play the goalie that you're going to play just to give him kind of minutes to play with the back line, and if nothing else, a back line needs to have as much familiarity as humanly possible. And you're not going to have a whole lot of games to really do that. So here's a chance to do it. Here's a chance to play Chris Richards and Tim Ream. And I don't understand why the hell we saw Blackman. And we saw Blackman again for the Japan game in a different formation, at least. But good God. So that was. There are multiple ways to stop their first goal, despite how good it was on their end. But even before that, it was problematic. Some 30 seconds or so into the game, Tyler Adams has a terrible, chance defending some kind of 50-50 ball. Allows himself to, I don't necessarily know if he gets fouled, but allows himself to get bullied off the ball. And immediately South Korea is played in behind. And Matt Freese actually had to do an amazing 1v1 kind of finish. And then they called it back for even the foul that Tyler Adams had. It would have counted. I think it wasn't offsides. It would have counted if Freese hadn't had that unbelievable save. But that was just setting the tone that this was going to be problems. You have, Tyler Adams was bullied, and Sebastian Berhalter was not necessarily good either. So not really great. Then we get to the second goal, and it's better moving from South Korea. But again, we played a little bit of a role in this, which is what usually happens. So they move the ball from one side of the field to the other. Long switch finds Son. They would then recycle it, get to the ball top of the box. It doesn't feel like there should be a whole lot of danger here, but the magic comes from one of their midfielders who fakes like he's got to dribble backwards. Usually, you if you're up against just kind of watching this, the instinct would be this is a safe play, and this is probably what's taught in academies. Dribble, run backwards, run safe, and play it backwards and recycle. And it seems like Diego Luna just basically starts his run before the South Korea player because it looks like his body is positioned that way. It looks like that's where he's going to go, and then immediately he changes his hips and he goes the other way and basically moves forward with the ball. So basically, there you go. Diego Luna is the lone player near him, and he runs away from him. Basically, I don't know how much you can fault Diego Luna. Other, I mean, it does look kind of foolish. It's really good play by the South Korean player, but at the same time, Diego Luna does kind of screw up. The reason to highlight this is a player on South Korea that knows what to do with the ball and also isn't afraid when someone's near them. And I want to highlight that as well because we, other than like a Gia Reyna and some of those other players that I've highlighted, Yunus Moose is actually really good at doing it as well. We don't have a ton of players, at least who Pochettino has been played so far, that do this. Christian Pulisic actually is someone that would do a move like this, to be honest. So it's not really great that they're able to do that, and then they just have a lot of clever 1-2s and clever give and goes in really tight spaces. And Son again is played in behind. He has a touch to a player next to him. Tim Ream is again just sixes and sevens. He just looks like he's in quick sand. He can't recover. Blackman also likewise can't recover. Freeze has to come out, and it's just an easy square pass that they're able to just get into the open net, and then for good measure, why not finish it off with a back heel? This was a class goal by them. So halftime comes. It's 2-0 them. We were not good. I don't know how much shots we had. maybe like 3 or 4. We just not only that, so it's not like we were just getting outplayed, in their own end, and we were actually, giving it back ourselves. We had a few moments here and there, but it was very, very few and minimal. Josh Sargent couldn't really get into the game. It didn't feel like Christian Pulisic was being able to impact things on the right side. And the other thing to say about him is in more and more of these games where you have players that know what they're doing with the ball, Pulisic's inability to really track back and help out defensively hurts. But it wasn't just him. Sargent played a role in that, and Diego Luna did as well. But so anyways, we get to the second half, and things turn around slightly. And I'll be fair. I'll say that we did play better in the second half. My one caveat before everyone gets carried away with this is South Korea lose one of their I think it's a striker who pulls up with a hamstring 5 minutes into this. They've got the game won, and they've got a friendly with Mexico coming up as well. To me, I just feel like they started to play. They started to take things easy. Basically, they had the game won. There's no reason to extend yourselves here. I think that's what happened. On top of us, bringing on some better players, we finally bring on Balogun as well. And again, it's not to hate on Josh Sargent, but he can't seem to create chances when he plays. Where Balogun within minutes starts to look way more threatening. Another player comes on is John McGlynn, and that's someone I should have mentioned even before those kind of roundups. He's someone that I've kind of forgotten as well. Well, I've only seen him. I've never seen him domestically, but I've only seen him in a couple of these friendlies here. I really do like the look of him. To be honest, to the point where as much as I hate on MLS players, he's someone that I almost give a pass to because he is someone, in my opinion at least, does look like he doesn't shy from the ball. I don't understand why we didn't see more of him in the Gold Cup. To be honest, he is someone I want to see more of because he came on and immediately we start to see better build up play with him. He comes on with basically Christian Roldan, and everyone was praising Christian Roldan. I don't think it was him. I think it was Jack McGlynn, because what he's doing is he's looking to immediately thread these balls in to find Christian Pulisic. All of a sudden, Pulisic came to life in that second half, and it was after Jack McGlynn came on. It is the final 15 minutes or so. The other thing we see is a change in shape. We see a wingback system. So now you allow Pulisic to play inside. He has less kind of defensive duties. You allow the wingbacks to be a little bit higher up. You allow a third center back there with Chris Richards. And again, this allows us to kind of suffocate them a little bit here, simply because they've taken Son off at this point. So South Korea doesn't have that ability to get in behind. They don't have that long ball directness. They've also lost someone to a hamstring injury. To me, it just kind of coincided a little bit with South Korea just wanting to see the game out and us actually putting some pressure on them. Another change that came on was Alex Zendejas, who came off the bench, and he just offered some calmness on the ball, and he allowed us to keep it more. And again, the more you can keep the ball, especially in the final third, the more you can do some kind of clever position changes where if a team's not switched on the entire time, you can slip people in behind. It is hard to stick with someone the entire time, especially you recycle it. You never know when a cross is going to come or not. It sucks to just fall for a dummy run where you have to extend some kind of energy. So being able to just keep the ball and move it quickly was needed, and we were not doing that until a couple of these players came in. And the other thing to kind of talk about with Zendejas is, I mentioned how there's just no kind of winger or some kind of wide player, and I don't really know if necessarily he's necessarily that either. But at least he plays on the right side. He offers way more than what we saw for options in this past Gold Cup. So I don't understand why Zendejas wasn't played or picked for the Gold Cup. That was a big mistake by Pochettino as well. Uh, so these are all positive things. So the only kind of negative here is we picked players in a pretty big game here, and we went with people like Sebastian Berhalter or Blackman or even Diego Luna. And again, they are at national level quality, in my opinion. Josh Sargent continues to do some decent things for Norwich, and he can't produce here. Now he's not he's kind of playing with subpar players. We can say that, but Balogun came on with a lot of these guys still on the field, and just immediately he just offered a different kind of explosiveness, a different ability to get in behind, a quicker kind of a connection. Uh, just the ball seemed to find him, and he was dangerous with it. He was finding Pulisic. Pulisic came to life. We got to a point where who knows? Maybe we got to actually ended this with a 2-2 kind of game where Chris Richards came on and he got a pretty good header that needed a pretty good save. He scored something like that versus Mexico, and scored like that with Saudi Arabia. And then the other thing to talk about is towards the end, we played a pretty nice combination in the box where uh, Jack McLean, found a pretty nice through ball, found Pulisic, and then Pulisic found Balogun, and Pulisic then Balogun found Pulisic again, and Pulisic had a pretty decent shot. Probably could have taken it earlier than he did. Took a touch that was saved, and then Balogun nearly on the rebound forced a pretty good save as well. So that was at least something there. Uh, so I mean, points to end with the game is we have the new formation. Maybe the note I had here was it wasn't negative to a point where I didn't want to see it again. Why not experiment a little bit more? You got to do something here. But the other thing too is even in that game, it was much easier to play with someone like a Roldan in that pivot when you didn't really have a whole lot of fear factor, where someone being able to counter on you, where again a team with you know, World Cup kind of quality on them would have. So anyways, we get to Japan, and things do kind of turn around again. They play an entirely second team. They play their A team versus Mexico, and then they rested everyone. They rested Matoma, no Endo. Minamino was rested as well. I think Matoma and Minamino came on towards the second half, so there's some of that. But they played. South Korea played a bunch of kind of Korean league players, and Japan played a bunch of Japan league players. So there's not to kind of talk about this. So we start with Balogun. Balogun gets a start here. Pulisic then to Dejas. So that front three actually wasn't that bad. And then Tyler Adams and Roldan, a disastrous midfield to be honest. And then Arfson and Freeze kind of his wing backs. And then Ream, Richards, and Blackman. I don't get why we had to see Blackman again. There's someone called Noah Banks that apparently is young. I think he's 18 or whatever, but he is at least making some kind of headlines in his kind of youth club career. I, why not? Why not play the kid? I don't think you're going to be playing Blackman in a World Cup game. But then again, I've I've s- I've I've gotten to a point where I've stopped second guessing Pochettino, saying he's not going to do this when all the evidence suggests maybe he is kind of thinking this way. He continues to praise this guy too, which isn't great. So, anyways, the score line doesn't really matter. I think we win 2-1 or 2-0. But again, to me, it's all about the performance, and we did not start this game off well. It's just a pick'em of who's who to highlight who has a heavy touch or a bad pass leading to a simple giveaway in possession. Adams did not have a good, start to the game. Roldan didn't either. Arfston, another person to highlight, didn't either. Tim Ream was giving the ball away, which wasn't great. Blackman, likewise. Again, it was a who's who. Uh, so we did not start off right. And the only thing to highlight here is, if not for Freeze, maybe that it would have been 2-0 them again. He had to be really really quick off his line. He had to be good with 1v1 saves. He'd be really good actually when the ball was crossed in. He was brave at coming out to stop that. So he had a lot of pretty big saves, to be honest. And again, if nothing else, he is someone to at least highlight going forward. As he maybe has the number one spot over Matt Turner as we go to more windows. I want to see more Freeze. I'll just say that. So I'm not always anti MLS. But so going back to the game, we did not start well, uh, but we were able to somehow get a lead, and despite him not doing his best to start, at least defensively, a lot of this was just Arsenal not having the best job defensively, but they're pressing us, and we just don't have really an ability to escape it. At least at the start, we didn't have any kind of control on it. When we had more kind of settled control, Arston were able to isolate him, and I'll talk him up here. He does a good job to do a step over to get past someone 1v1. That's what you need from a wingback as well when you're playing that kind of position. So he was able to do what he was asked to do. Wins the 1v1. Then he doesn't just dally on it, and he gets a very good early cross off into the box, and we actually have some numbers into the box, and it goes over Balogun's head, but it finds Zendejas, and Zendejas does a very good job to rotate his body because the ball is a little bit behind him. He does a unbelievable job to position himself to get this first time, and it's a great hit volley to just kind of control it, and good power, good direction to just flies into the net. Just unbelievable connect there, and then we get to 2-0, and again one of the positives being freeze. The other positive was Balogun, and he. I think this kind of a free kick. Timber maybe takes it early, and we're able to get Christian Pulisic into a pretty decent 1v1 kind of area, and he's got the legs and pace to be able to ball carry it. He's able to uh, create some kind of danger moment for the defenders in front of him to know to not know where Pulisic's going to go, and Pulisic's able to slip in a pretty nice pass to find Florian Balogun making a run into the back shoulder, and then very nice way to finish with basically passes it into the side of the net. But the other thing too was Balogun's ahead of the ball when this happens. He's not making this run from deep. He's already ahead, and because he's doing that, and because that fear factor, because especially in a higher line, is there. Him making that run is driving those center back line backwards. That's what opens it up for Pulisic to have that space to run into. So that Balogun Pulisic connection was great here, and Pulisic feeds him in, and it's a great play by Pulisic. It's a great play by Balogun as well, and again, it's just you need someone to open those things up for those kind of players that need to ball carry, and it did. So and then we get to maybe some more changes, and in the second half, it was more of a case of again, I think it was just like a case of Japan just kind of wanting to see this out. But I will talk about what we did because we actually poured them on a little bit in that second half. Miglin comes on, Damian Downs comes on, and we could have put a couple more into the net. They actually had a couple pretty nice saves by their keeper, McGlynn. A couple really nice strikes from distance. He has a really lovely left foot, and nice little 1-2 by Diego Luna that played Damian Downs and did a decent little give and go and nice little pass and move into the box. Good movement by the striker, and that forced a pretty good save by the keeper to come out as well. So again, hey, it is better. Japan wasn't really playing their best, but what I really wanted was some kind of performance, uh, some kind of a way to bounce back, essentially, and we did see that. So credit to the guys that were picked. We did see some kind of bounce back from and different kind of change from the first half in the South Korea game all the way through. We had a lot of shots in that second half for South Korea, and we actually ended up having a lot of shots in the second half here. So if nothing else, that's something. Um, and yeah, I'll talk it up and hype it because I didn't have anything else outside of that. This isn't again. I don't want to do posts. I don't want to just hate because that's just not fun. To be honest. So this is something to at least praise. This is something to hype, and this is something to say. This is something to build on. Why don't we go? Why don't we go from there? We'll be positive because I've done enough negativity there. Already talked about the Arston stuff. The one kind of negative to end off. Why not? The good way to end here. The Berhalter experiment needs to end now. Same with Luna. Don't need to go after Ream. Maybe there are ways to make Ream kind of work, and I've already kind of spoken about that with supplying him with legs in midfield and supplying him with legs at the fullback spot. But I don't really see much to offer with a Luna. Maybe you give him some kind of roster spot. I don't really know. I don't see what Berhalter offers you at all. There are a number of midfielders that you only got to play with probably two if you're going to play with a 10. But even if you play with a three, I don't see any reason why he would get any kind of game time. Even without Musa, McKennie, and Gio, even if you go with Johnny Cardoza or even a Tyler Adams, even if you go with a Luca Della Torre, continuing on, you have Aiden Morris, you have Tanner Tessman. I'm not even getting close to or Jack McGlynn. I'm not getting close to Berhalter's name. And in this case, we actually saw Christian Red Roldan out of nowhere. BB stretch it out. The 30-year-old self who apparently had a good decent to League's Cup run, which was praised. I didn't see any of it, but it is what it is. I don't really think Christian Roldan should be trotted out either, but I'd probably take Roldan before Sebastian Berhalter. I just I'm making a point here. I don't see what everyone else keeps saying about him, because it's not like he's a super athlete where maybe he's not necessarily great on the ball, but he offers great energy, great pressing, where he's helping to win turnovers. Maybe he's not the best on the ball, but maybe he's really good with recognizing where to be on the field. Maybe really good positionally. Maybe really good coachable. I haven't seen any of that either. So he's the former coach's son, and I just think someone's getting a favor. To be honest, I hate kind of going there, but anyways, that's where we are. Uh, Positives to talk about because I've already been very negative. Good to see Serginho Dest back, and immediately, in my opinion, gets that right back slot immediately. Even though we haven't really seen him that much. Freeman. Well, it wasn't really great in the Gold Cup, but at least here he actually did a decent job defensively when Matoma came on. So maybe defensively, Freeman can have something to offer. And everyone, when Freeman plays, everyone loves talking about his dad being Antonio Freeman. Uh, I don't think that's enough for him to warrant being the starting striker. I really did like Dest. That Dest was one of the few real positives from actually that really dismal South Korea game, and then didn't really see a ton of him versus Japan, but it is at least something there. So you know, there's a potential kind of starting 11 here with Balogun, Pulisic, Gio, and Reyna, and then Musa and McKennie, and then you have Anthony Robinson, maybe a Ream, and then a Richardson Dest, or you can find a way to make it into a back three with using most of those players as well. It's not what we've seen in the last couple of windows isn't in my hopeful opinion, or my optimism is not what we're going to see next summer. So that's the only reason why I'm not doomsmoding now. But that said, this this fun experiment with these players from this January camp that continues on into September needs to end. We need to see our main guys back starting next month in October. Now, I don't like the idea that Pochettino continues to talk about how these guys are so great and he's developed a nice, decent rapport with them. And some of that I understand. He is only just kind of joined, and so he's gotten relationships with players that he's seen the most, and he's seen a lot of these players because of that January camp when a lot of those Europe-based players were not able to leave their clubs during those windows, and so that's why I think going back to that January camp thing, I just think that really is a detriment to what if our ultimate goal is to field the best kind of U.S. team, the most competitive U.S. team for this upcoming international tournament that we're about to host, that we're about to, if you listen to Alexei Lalas, he says that he wants to make the world look at U.S. soccer differently. That's kind of his phrase he likes to say. If that is the case, then we can't do these handouts anymore, for lack of a better word. So, anyways, that's where I am here. I just wanted to talk about this again. I do like talking about the U.S. team, despite it, giving me some fits. And enough of the negativity. If you're a soccer fan, this summer is a massive one coming up, and we still have a little bit of a ways to go. Where this the so we have a lot of issues to fix, but we do have some time, despite it only being a year away. We do have some time to maybe address those. So. Anyways, that's all I want to say about that. So thank you for tuning in. A little bit late on the Gold Cup, but it is what it is. I also have a couple of episodes already kind of, at least scripts already done in the Champions League final. And again, this is forever ago. And actually, a little podcast on Liverpool winning the EPL that I wasn't able to get to back then, because before I think the last episode I did was back after Liverpool lost to PSG. So I wouldn't mind kind of getting that out there. I don't think anyone's gonna actually see it, but I'll put it out there as one of those kind of in the vault kind of episodes. That's kind of fun. Anyways, so be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for the next week for when the EPL returns. Just kind of a usual kind of review coming up, and then we'll go from there. So thank you for tuning in, and until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.